Hi, and welcome to Smarter Selling, Leveraging Guided Selling for Repeatable, Scalable Revenue Generation. I'm Greg Moran. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at Conquer.io, and really appreciate everybody joining us today for this webinar. Before we begin, just a couple quick housekeeping things here. Number one, we've got people from all over the place on here. Personally, I'm actually in Europe at the moment, in Portugal. So so it's about 6 p.m. for me, but I think we've got just about every time zone here covered today. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, and I'm really glad you'll take the time to join us today. I am on a hotel lobby connection, Wi-Fi connection. So I'm going to do my best here with the connection I have. But if it gets a little bit choppy, I've got my friends Will Penfield and Kyle Skiba here on the line with me from Conquer. So if it gets a bit choppy, we're going to do our best just to keep moving through. So if we're jumping around a little bit, just bear with us as we go, and apologize for any background noise. So webinar today will take just probably about 45 minutes or so. Hope want to make this as interactive as possible. Ask any questions you'd like to right through the chat bot. That's right through the chat window. That's right on the screen. As you go through, just if you think of it, type it in. You got a question, you got a comment. And we'll do our best to get through them. You don't have to wait until the end. I'll jump through them as much as I can as we go here. So appreciate it. If you're not familiar with Conquer, we provide voice and sales enablement technology to some of the top enterprise sales organizations in the world. Companies like ADP and Paychex use us, and Waste Management and a lot of others use our technology to really automate and help guide the selling process. And really, that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today when we talk about selling smarter. Something that is near and dear to our heart at Conquer, and I'm sure if you're on this webinar today, it's probably near and dear to your heart as well. We've got a lot of different enterprise sales organizations that are with us today, and with a whole lot of collective experience. So feel free to share that experience and share that knowledge in the chat window as well. Okay, so let's get started here. So go ahead, Kyle, and you can change the screen. You'll also, because of the connection here, you'll also hear me asking Kyle to switch screens here as we go. So when we talk about selling smarter, if you look at sales today, I hate to use this term, and I'm kind of saying this a bit tongue in cheek, but most of the way that selling is done today is kind of dumb. And I don't mean, dumb as in the cognitive sense. I mean, dumb as in it's not really built on sort of intelligent application or intelligent use. It's not really taking advantage of the technology that's around us today that can really enable a sales process to be much more automated, much more repeatable, and much more scalable. It's built on systems that really lack insight to really guide the buying journey, right? So what does that mean? It means that you often have siloed systems that really lack alignment between the top and the bottom of the funnel, right? It means that prospect data is often is really not used as much as it can be to really help guide the buying process. And and as a result of that, it's a very homogeneous experience and really nothing to differentiate it. And it really often lacks a lot of real-time guidance to reps. And it ultimately, what you end up with a process like that is you make a sales process that's entirely focused on a sales rep's ability to make it up on the fly, right? We see this all the time, and that's why we see such a discrepancy. I mean, everybody knows the 80-20 rule, right? And that's why we see this huge discrepancy between so few of our sales reps go on to have long and successful careers with us, right? Because we're really banking so much on the personality or behavioral characteristics of the rep instead of really putting systems and process around them that can really help enable a smarter selling process. And what this does is, to the prospect, it adds real friction to the buying process. You don't have to, think too hard, I'm sure, to have your own examples of this, right? When you've gone out and you've tried to buy something yourself, right? Just for your home or, for anything else. And I'm just take it right out of the business world for a second, and it's just your own personal life, where you've gone out and you've tried to buy something and there's just so much friction in that process. Right now, I'm trying to have paving done on my driveway. If there's an example of a full of friction buying process, I think, more than anything, this is what it is, because the process is really revolving so much around what that business needs, that vendor needs, and not what I need as the consumer, right? And that's really where you often see these kind of what I'm calling sort of dumb processes. There's a stat you've probably seen flying around. It's a McKinsey report that came out a couple of years ago that says 70% of the buying decision is made before engaging with the sales rep. But when our systems really lack personalization, they really lack, they're really about us more than they are about the buyer. When they lack real sales intelligence and become overly reliant on the rep, really what we're doing is we're losing the prospect at the moment that it matters most, when the heavy lifting can really begin. Because if we believe that by the time that a prospect is on the phone with our rep, if we believe the stat that 70% of the selling process is already done, and I've seen this as high as 80 before, it's that last bit of the selling process where we're going to bring that person over the finish line, right? So if that's where we're creating friction in the process, it ultimately is going to slow down our ability to close, to service the client properly, to kind of all of those things that are going to really make sure that we've got a successful relationship with this company going forward. So, when we're talking about selling smarter, here's what ultimately what we're talking about is combining technology to guide the process with real customer data and real sales intelligence. And and that's why when you look at this chart, it's really about its technology, its customer data, and its sales intelligence. And really what's the outcome is a highly personalized buying experience with streamlined decision-making and much greater sales effectiveness. Guided selling technology, as we're going to be talking about today, can do this for you. And this is when we talk about really making a sales process much more repeatable and much more saleable, and we call it smart selling. That's really what we're talking about. Again, it's combining the technology, customer data, and sales intelligence, ultimately so we can get to that buying experience with a highly personalized buying experience, streamlined decision making, improved sales effectiveness. If we just think about that in our everyday selling environment, I mean, how do you even value that if we can start to reduce that kind of friction in the selling process? So moving on, Kyle, next slide, please. Okay, so sorry about that again. Just a little delay here. So when we're really looking at this smarter selling process, why is this important today, right? Why does this matter right now? Well, it matters because buyers today have higher expectations and really less forgiveness for dumb processes, selling processes, and systems than they've ever had before. It matters today more than ever. The way we buy, and then subsequently, obviously, the way that we sell has fundamentally changed. Our prospective customers, our prospects that we're talking to every day have a different set of expectations than they've ever had before. They're expecting much more digital buying options. with AI enabled. Recently, Accenture, you may have seen this, Accenture released a report that showed exactly this. 90% of buyers now expect at least some part of the selling process to be digitized. 90%. So if you have a fully manual selling process that's completely reliant on just rep buyer interaction with no facilitation of any kind of digitized buying, you're only serving that 10% of the market that doesn't care, and that's probably not really where you want to be. You've got to have some digitization in your buying process. Your customers demand it. They're expecting greater personalization and knowledge of their needs. Here's a really scary stat. 53% of buyers are willing to switch vendors if they aren't getting a personalized experience. So just think about this in your own life, right? How many times have you gotten on the phone, you've called a company for more information, you get transferred around, for information on the product that you're interested in buying? Again, just put this in your person, forget about your business for a second. You get transferred around, you start having to repeat yourself from scratch constantly. I don't know about you, but there are situations where I have actually moved on in cases like that and moved on to another vendor myself. And I'm sure you've done the same thing, right? It just gets too frustrating. You're spending so much time trying to repeat the same information. Just think of it in the most simplistic terms, right? You call in, I know this happens to me all the time. You call in, somebody says, okay, enter your phone number, you enter your phone number, you get on the phone, the person answers, you're on the phone with the customer service agent or sales rep, and first question they ask you is what? What's your phone number, right? It's making the process much more digital, having the intelligence available to your reps so that when a prospect calls in, when a potential buyer calls in, that intelligence is there for the rep to use in that call to make it, again, this is about removing friction from the process. And they're expecting much simpler solutions with a customer-led buying experience. Again, I talked about this before, but if you think about kind of the dumb buying experience, right? Really, what is that? We explained what that looks like. It's very much a company-led experience, not a consumer-led experience, right? It becomes about us. Here is the process that we want to take a buyer through as a company, not here is the process that we that our consumers in our organization want to go through, right? Your customers are demanding a much more consumer-focused buying experience, making it about them. More often than not, again, our selling processes end up about us. And it's really about the way that we want the process to work. And what does that mean? It so often becomes overly complex and really unclear for the buyer to understand what's happening, right? You're kind of, buyers spend so much of the time, whether we want to admit it or not, especially in enterprise selling, just lost in the buying process. Okay, what comes next? What do you need next? How do we get there, right? It becomes very unclear for them to try to understand the path to what they needed to get. Is this the best solution? Is it the right price for me? Right? And is this the right vendor for me? So the bottom line is that really building a smarter selling process through guided selling is to give the customer what they're looking for. What they're looking for is simplicity and personalization. So now that we've framed the issue, I want to dive into specifically what is guided selling and how can you use it within your organization. Go ahead, Carl. So ultimately, what guided selling technology is about are technologies that make selling smarter. They increase customer engagement and they generate higher revenue, right? So who wouldn't want that? Carl, you can switch screens if you haven't. Oh, thank you. So we talked about why it matters now, but here's why this technology matters now, right? Number one, it helps us improve sales efficiency. We're all looking for how do we reduce our sales cycle time? How do we get more throughput from our existing sales team. And that's really what sales efficiency is all about, right? It helps our reps to make informed decisions about how to guide the process with the customer with greater accuracy. And ultimately, what this really equates to is reduce sales cycles, like I mentioned. It enhances the customer experience, right? Again, the buyer experience or the customer experience, because it gives us the ability to personalize the sales experience by providing customers tailored recommendations and solutions. Really, so that if we understand the customer better, if we understand the prospect better, we can lead them to the solution that's right for them, but doing it much faster in a much more efficient manner. The buying process really becomes about the customer and where they want to take it based on their own needs. It allows us to make better data-driven decisions by using customer data and sales intelligence together. We talked about this before. We really defined what guided selling is all about. We're collecting data on every sales and marketing interaction without requiring the dreaded rep documentation. So I'm going to show you how this works in a minute, but think about this for a second, okay? The intelligence that most organizations have today in a more dumb selling process, as I mentioned, the documentation is completely reliant on the rep going into your CRM, putting in and documenting each interaction. Now, you don't have to necessarily yell out this answer. I'm not going to hear it anyway. But how many of your reps are actually doing it? How often are you getting usable data? And that's what guided selling can do for you by eliminating the requirement to have reps go in and create that documentation, because the technology is actually doing it in the background for you. What this does is then by doing this, we're building intelligence that can provide real-time insight to both the buyer and the seller in their decision and process, right? Because what we're doing is we're collecting this information so that the next time the buyer calls in with more questions or things like that, we know where we've left off the conversation. We know exactly what they're interested in and how to pick it up right from where we were before. It provides much more consistent sales outcomes. We're ensuring that all reps are equipped with the same information and providing the real-time insight. We're providing them the real-time insight to the rep during each selling touch point, right? By doing this, what ultimately ends up happening is we become far less reliant on the rep and more reliant on the process, right? That 80-20 rule can fly out the window. Because if we're providing that real-time guidance to the rep, to be able to tell the rep, here's the challenge that the customer's trying to solve, here's what we've been talking, here's how to guide the conversation. That's really what this is about. And it makes our selling process much more effective. We're guiding the reps, like I said, in real time. And we're doing this in often very complex selling situations. A lot of the companies on this call today have a highly complex enterprise selling environment with really complex decisioning processes on the part of your customers. And by providing the reps the information that they need and doing it in real time, we're able to take the customer quickly to the solution that's right for them. Again, less reliance on the rep, more reliance on the process, more reliance on the technology to guide. And ultimately, it reduces rep up time. We've all heard so much about the Great Resignation and quiet quitting. And I saw yesterday, I was actually reading an article last night about TikTok quitting. I'm not sure if anybody's actually seen this, but this was a very bizarre one. I guess people are quitting on TikTok now. I don't know. Sometimes I realize, I think how old I am, and that was one of those moments. I would never have thought of quitting a job on social media, but who knows? That's what's happening. So, we talk about the Great Resignation. We talked about the challenge of getting, we've heard so much about the challenge of getting and keeping talent. And this means we really need to make the most of each selling interaction for each rep. What guided selling does is it put tools and information in the hands of the reps to ensure that even the most inexperienced, brand new reps can handle the most challenging selling situations. So again, no question that guided selling can really revolutionize, guided selling technology can really revolutionize the selling process. So let's move forward, Kyle. If you could change the screen, and let's look at exactly how this can work. So I'm going to apologize. The best way to actually see this technology is to do is, follow up. I'm happy to do a demo with you anytime, but I'm going to walk you through a couple of visuals here to give you a sense of really how this works. I'm just, again, hard to tell if I've got thanks, Kyle. I've got a little delay on my end, so I think you're probably seeing it before I am here. But so first, what we're looking at when we talk about guided selling, we talk about greater sales efficiency. And what we're talking about is how guided selling can really help a rep make more informed decisions on how to lead the selling process. So I want to show you, this is a little bit hard to read, but it's a visual representation of a decision tree within the Concur technology. I'm showing you Concur today. Full disclosure, there are other companies that do this as well. Obviously, you're on a Concur webinar, so I'm going to show you Concur technology. But this is kind of representative of how a system like this works. And obviously, always more than happy to dive into a more personalized demo, but want to give you a sense here. So this is a visual representation of a decision tree that shows how this kind of decisioning process works and how you can lay this out within the technology. As I mentioned, the examples I'm showing are from our Concur Cadence product. We use this decision tree format to create pre-planned decision points and follow-up, basically automated action and follow-up sequences. So think of a prospect coming in, and there are a number of outcomes from each touch point that a rep has. If it's a positive touch point, if it's a negative touch point, if it's a neutral touch point, if they're requesting more information, there's a myriad of things that can happen with each interaction. And what we're doing is we're creating this decisioning process. So the technology, by monitoring in the background, it understands if this is a positive, negative, neutral, or any other kind of outcome. And it automatically can put this prospect into the right cadence based on a predetermined workflow, right? By pre-planning each step in the selling journey, this is really where we're talking about relying much less on the rep to conduct the follow-up, but we're freeing them up through automation and making sure that the customer is directed to the right step every time. We're freeing them up to build relationships with the customer, right? That's what this pre-planning of the decisioning process is really does for us. So again, what these decision trees within the Concur product really do is they control the sequence and timing of the buyer-seller connections. And then with each of these steps, you can have email templates or videos or anything like that that you want sent to the prospect, follow-up information, you name it, going out to the prospect based on the outcome of the previous touch point. This is just simply decisioning workflow based on the outcome of the previous touch point, so we can automate the follow-up process. And we can automate the selling process. Go ahead, Kyle. You can switch screens. So once the decisioning process is set, and that's kind of the first real major step in this, in guided selling technologies. I'm just going to give Kyle here a second to catch up with me. All right, thanks, Kyle. Once the decisioning process is set, we have the selling and follow-up sequences at that point automated. We can then focus on personalizing the customer experience by tailoring our recommendations, right? So based on the decisioning, now it becomes really about personalizing the experience. So here's how we do this. What's the biggest, if you think about it, what's the biggest limitation that you have to personalization today? Well, you can't personalize if you lack information about the customer and their interests and their intent. Right? You got to have those things, or else there's no way to personalize it outside of maybe a mail merge field that has their first name or something, right? And it's funny when we think about personalization. That's so often, I think, what comes to mind, right? Well, I did personalize it when I sent the email to Will, the follow-up email. It said "Dear Will," and it didn't say "Dear," first name. That's not personalization, right? What we're really talking about is personalizing based on the intelligence that we've gathered about the prospect or the customer, their interests and their intent. What guided selling technologies can do is collect this information in the background by automatically documenting each sales touch point, as I mentioned before. The technology can listen in to the calls, understand what the disposition of that call is based on the outcome of that call, and then start to automate the process from that point. We're not reliant on the rep's note-taking ability, but we can use the technology to collect each of those interactions through any channel that a person's coming in. They're coming in through a chatbot, LinkedIn message, email, phone call, doesn't matter. Our website doesn't make any difference. Text to the rep's mobile phone can be documented, can be caught. So it doesn't matter where they're coming in, but we're collecting information in each of those interactions to understand exactly where the customer interest lies, right? So this is an omni-channel technology. It doesn't matter. It doesn't rely on, just a chatbot and that's it or anything like that. It doesn't matter where the interaction is coming into, where that touch point is taking place. We're able to capture that connection. And we can collect information on every prospect interaction, regardless, like I said, of those communication channels. So think about how it works today in a remote selling environment, right? I mean, most of I assume everybody on this call has at least some remote reps, if not all remote reps, or many of them. Our reps are communicating with our prospects on their cell phone, by text, LinkedIn messaging. What's happening to that critical sales intelligence? We end up in a situation where we're simply hoping that the rep is going back into our CRM to document it. That's what we're doing today, right? 99% of the sales forces out there are doing this today, except those reps aren't doing it. Guided selling technologies can collect this information regardless of the channel, based on those interactions, place the prospect in the right follow-up sequence, automated from there, again, bringing up the rep to build those relationships. That's what guided selling technology is about. It's about automating the selling process. Go ahead, Carl. And then because we take a multi-channel approach and we collect sales intelligence, regardless of where the customer is choosing to interact with our sellers, we can use this information to create the right smart follow-up touch points. And I think the screen is caught up in here. Sorry, I was a little bit ahead of that one. So think of the scenario that happens all the time. You're a seller. You're heading out to dinner on a Friday evening with your friends, and a prospect calls your cell. Right? It's happened to me. It's probably happened to everybody on this call at one point or another. You need to call them back on Monday. What are the chances you actually remember to return that phone call? What are the chances your reps are remembering to return that phone call, right? By unifying the communications, it's all tracked the same, and the technology will automatically prioritize that phone call for the rep on Monday morning to call that prospect back. So what does the rep have to do to make that whole sequence happen? Nothing. They just need to go to dinner and have fun. That's it. Because the technology is picking up on that interaction. It knows, based on the time of day and the day of the week and the decisioning process that's already been built, it knows that we're going to prioritize this call for Monday morning, so that when that rep comes in on Monday morning, that call is the number one on their priority list to return the call back to that prospect. Again, when we talk about guided selling and we talk about making better data-driven decisions through guided selling, this is what we mean when we say we want to utilize data, we want to utilize sales intelligence to give those reps real-time insight. Well, that real-time insight in that case is, what do I need to do on Monday morning based on what happened over the weekend, based on this last Friday or something like that. Again, it tells us when we need to follow up. It automates that follow-up sequence again. So, and that's really, we talk about less rep reliance, that's really what we're talking about here, right? Guided selling technology can really help us do it. Go ahead, Carl. Okay, I'm just just pause here for a second while the slide catches up to me. Okay. All right. Now, because we built the key decision points in the selling journey back when I showed you that decision tree, and because we're not documented, we don't have to rely on the rep to document each touch point as it occurs, as we talked about in the last couple of screens. And we're automating those that have yet to occur, as I showed you in the last screen. We're ensuring that our reps are following a predefined playbook, right? Playbook is one of the favorite expressions in selling today. We all have it, right? But how often do we really know how well they're followed? And that's really, again, another area where guided selling technology can really excel. This means that the buyer and seller interactions are happening, that they're consistent, and they're of the highest quality, providing the right information to the prospect when they need it, based on their needs. And that's what our playbooks are all about, right? It's how do we create efficiency? How do we create effectiveness? How do we reduce our sales cycle times? How do we increase our revenue throughput? How do we reduce our rep success rates? Well, this is exactly it. It's about consistency. It's about providing high quality interactions, and it's about providing those interactions based on the customer's own terms. So when we talk about playbooks and we talk about their importance to the sales process, how many of us can know that these are actually followed? But guided selling technologies like Conquer can not only ensure compliance, but we can make sure that each step in our selling process is performing so that we can make thoughtful adjustments and keep optimizing. So here's what I'm talking about, right? When we say it's performing, we often have a lot of steps in our selling process. We have a lot of follow-up cadences that we run. We have a lot of automated emails and things like that, but rarely do we know how well these things are actually working. And what guided selling technology can do, because this is pre-planned, it can show the effectiveness of each step in the selling process. And I'll show you that in a second. But this provides critical insight to sales leaders like yourself to truly understand at a much more granular level what's working and what isn't. And in a lot of cases, who's working and who isn't, right? That's the kind of information we want. When we talk about a playbook, we want a real-time playbook that we can iterate and we can optimize based on the intelligence that we're gathering to really understand what's working best as we go. Go ahead, Kyle. So I'm just going to let the screen catch up to me here for one second. So for the first time, we can understand the quality of the interactions our sellers are having, right? And that's something entirely different. Yes, we can hear sampling of recordings and things like that, but to really understand on a touch point by touch point basis, with each touch point, we can not only show the consistency of the message, but also whether that information is actually resonating with our prospect. This tells us exactly what actions we're taking in our selling process, our playbook, and how they're directly correlated to new opportunities and closed won business. So I want you to think about that for a second, right? What technology like Conquer can do is it can tell us exactly what actions, because we have so many actions during the process that we're taking based on our playbook, but then directly correlating those things to those touch points to new opportunities and closed won business. Because what does that mean? If we can eliminate the parts of those touch points that aren't effective, those emails, the automated components, things like that are not effective, and really isolate that down to the ones that are effective, we can start to recalibrate our process to have a much more performance-driven process and get unparalleled analytics and insight to be able to make those decisions on a much more informed basis as a sales leader. So this insight means we can really remove steps from our process that don't work, fix the ones that are sort of working, we probably have a lot of those, and then maximize those that are really working great. We all talk about the importance of following the playbook, but rarely do we have any real insight into whether those steps in that playbook are actually working. Guided selling technologies like Conquer give them information, give you information, and more importantly, let you take action to create a simpler, more focused customer selling journey with more opportunities and more closed won deals. This also really means in a talent market that's highly disruptive, we can get new reps ramped up faster, and we get them performing better. Ultimately, this means we can do much more with much less. So that is our pre-build content here. Love to answer any questions that you may have on guided selling technologies. And while I'm waiting for the questions to start to populate, hope that it's not getting a little loud. It's getting a little loud around where I am here, but hopefully it's not getting too disruptive on everybody else's side. So first question that just came in: how do you ensure that reps are all following the same guided selling playbook and not going rogue? Yeah, it's a great question. Going rogue is a big thing in the sales process. One of the things that technologies like this can do is, because we are documented, because we're tracking each touch point, we can actually start to look at what the compliance to each touch point is. So are reps actually following the process? Kyle, you can switch the slide here, by the way. Are reps actually following the process? Are they complying with the touch points, or are they just off doing completely their own thing? We can easily see that in the reporting and the analytics functionality of the tool to make sure that they're actually following our playbook. Because again, it's one thing when a rep may be struggling and they're following the playbook. It's another thing when a rep is struggling and they're just off kind of on their own. And the framing of this question going rogue. So great question. Kyle, go ahead and change the slide here. Next question is a great question. Where does AI play into all of this? AI is actually in many ways what is driving much of this system. So when we're talking about the guided selling process, and especially the real-time guidance that's being provided to reps, that's AI, right? So what's happening is that the system is monitoring the interactions between our reps and the prospect, and based on those interactions, it's making recommendations. So, for instance, if they're on a call and a prospect says, "Hey, does your technology have AI?" Like this question, right? It would automatically prompt in a guided selling component on the screen of the rep to provide the answer to that question, and then be able to move the question, then be able to continue the selling process from there. So it's providing real-time prompts for the reps to follow based in real time on what's happening in their interaction. So that's AI at play, and that's how that works. So AI plays a big part in Conquer's guided selling technology. Another question: how can guided selling work with other sales tools for a better selling experience? Yeah, we've got a number of integrations. We are a native application within Salesforce.com. First off, I should have mentioned that. So we live in the Salesforce.com environment. So that's one. When your reps are in the technology, if you're a Salesforce.com user, when they're in the technology, in many ways, they're not even going to realize they're in the Conquer environment. Most of what they're going to be seeing is just simply a Salesforce interaction, a Salesforce user interface. So they actually don't have to, in terms of user adoption, you have a lot of other sales enablement or guided selling technologies that have adoption rates in the 5 to 10% range. Concur is routinely over 90%, but that's because we're native in the Salesforce.com environment. So there's nothing for a rep to actually have to go learn. If they know how to use Salesforce, they know how to use Concur. And there are other technologies that we can incorporate. We've got interactions with many of the leading tools that are out there, tools like Gong and others that many of you are probably using today. So if it's in the Salesforce.com environment, it's a very simple interaction between our technology and those technologies. In the final minute here, any remaining questions? All right. Well, I am going to say thank you very much. I hope that this was helpful for you. Really encourage you to go to concur.io, request a demo. Would love to walk you through the technology and its fit for your organization in particular. It is now 6:43 here in Porto, Portugal, which is where I'm sitting at the moment. And I hope you all either have a great evening if you're over here in Europe, or a great day if you're back in the U.S. North America. So really do appreciate it. Look forward to having further conversations with you about how Concur can really help your organization start to sell smarter. Thanks, and have a great day.